Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really taking a scalpel to the ideas around personal mastery. Specifically, we're digging into the core frameworks from Tony Robbins' big book, Awaken the Giant Within. We're trying to cut past, the hype, the big stage stuff, and give you a kind of shortcut to the actual tools you can use for taking control, like right now, over emotions, habits, the whole trajectory.
Right. And our mission here, for you listening, is really to walk away understanding how these techniques work. We want to pull out the repeatable steps, the things that give you leverage, stuff you can apply immediately, to actually change those emotional links, those habits. This isn't just theory, it's more like applied psychology. Psychological engineering, maybe.
Okay, so if you had to boil that entire philosophy, like the whole book, down to one single core idea, what's the foundation?
Well, it's probably the most powerful concept in there. Decisions. Decisions determine your destiny. The framework hammers this home again and again. The gap between where you are now and where you want to be, it's bridged by making clear decisions, constantly. Hesitation, the book argues, just kills momentum. So if you want change, the absolute number one thing, decide now. And then, crucially, take some kind of immediate action.
Okay, decisions first, but let's unpack the why behind our actions, or inaction maybe, because understanding hesitation is key, right? Robbins says almost every choice, big or small, is basically about moving towards pleasure or away from pain. Is it really that simple?
Fundamentally, yes. At a neurological level, pain and pleasure are the steering wheel. We don't just act logically. We act based on what we've learned to associate with feeling good or feeling bad. So if exercise feels like pain and hassle in your mind, you won't do it. But if scrolling social media gives you that quick hit of pleasure, that escape, that becomes the default.
Okay, so the key isn't just gritting your teeth and pushing through the pain barrier. It's realizing those links, those associations, they're actually changeable, malleable. And this is where the material pulls from things like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and behavioral psychology, isn't it? It's about consciously reprogramming your own mind.
Precisely. We're creatures of conditioning, And if decisions shape destiny, well, our emotional state dictates the quality of our decisions. If you feel resourceful, confident, creative, happy, you make better choices.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But if you're feeling limited, anxious, maybe frustrated, your decisions are going to reflect that state. The really exciting idea here is that your state isn't fixed. It's completely manipulable.
But how do you do that instantly? It sounds great, like flipping a switch, but lots of people feel stuck, trapped by anxiety or fear, maybe.
Yeah, and they feel trapped because they aren't consciously using the three levers that control that internal feeling, what the book calls the emotional triad. Your emotional state right now is basically a result of these three things working together. One, your physiology, how you hold your body, how you breathe, how you move. Two, your focus, what you're actually thinking about, where your attention is. And three, your language, the words you use both out loud and, maybe more importantly, in your head.
Okay, so if I'm sitting here slumped over, shallow breathing, running a mental movie of all my mistakes, I'm basically locking myself into a negative state. It feeds itself.
That's the system, exactly. But change just one of those things, and the whole system has to shift. And the fastest way in, often physiology. Take the state switch exercise. It's like a 2-minute drill designed to just break that negative pattern, physically. You immediately change your posture, stand up tall, shoulders back, power pose, basically. Then you take maybe 6 really deep diaphragmatic breaths, forces oxygen in, disrupts that shallow stress breathing. Then shift your focus. Deliberately think of one specific time you felt really proud, a victory. And finally, anchor it with language. Maybe even say a strong affirmation out loud. Shout it even.
That physical disruption makes a lot of sense. It's hard for your brain to keep feeling scared or weak if your body is acting confident and strong. So that's a quick fix, a hack. But what about the deeper stuff, the long-term changes? This is where we get into what you called the heavy machinery, right? Neuroassociative conditioning, or NAC.
NAC is really positioned as the engine for lasting change in the book. Its whole purpose is to replace an old destructive pattern, often unconscious, with a new empowering one. And it does this by completely swapping the feelings, the emotional associations tied to those behaviors. You basically train your brain to stop linking pleasure to the bad habit and start linking it intensely to the good one.
Okay, let's break down the steps, because this sounds like the core technique listeners could try.
Right. It starts with getting really clear. Step 1, pinpoint the specific pattern. What exactly do you want to change? Emotional eating, procrastinating on that big project. Nail it down. Step 2 is, well, it's intense. You have to associate massive pain with sticking to the old habit, and not just abstract pain. You need to visualize it vividly. Sensory details. What are the long-term costs emotionally, financially, physically if you don't change? Feel it.
Wait, hang on. Massive pain. That sounds, I don't know, almost like beating yourself up. Is there a risk there? Like pushing too hard makes you just shut down.
Right. That's a fair question, and
Yeah.
a common one. But the argument in the framework is actually the opposite. Our brains are wired to avoid immediate pain above almost anything else. Survival instinct. If the pain of the old habit stays vague, off in the future somewhere, you won't change. The motivation isn't strong enough. You have to make the pain of staying the same feel worse than the discomfort of changing right now. So it's not punishment. It's making the true costs, the stress, the lost opportunities, maybe the shame, feel absolutely real, viscerally real today.
Got it. So it's about making that future consequence feel immediate and emotionally charged. Okay. So after step two's pain association, we flip it.
Yes. Step 3 is the flip. Associate massive pleasure with the new desired habit. Again, vivid visualization. Imagine the pride, the energy, the better relationships, the success that this new behavior unlocks. Feel the rewards. You link this positive future with intense pleasure until your brain starts to crave that new path. It has to feel irresistible. Step 4. Create an immediate, simple ritual or action. Something that breaks the old pattern the second it starts, it kicks off the new one. A pattern may interrupt. And step 5, this is key. Repeat. Reinforce. You have to practice it until that new association is automatic, unconscious. The new default.
Okay, to make that concrete, you mentioned the NEC mini exercise, like pick one bad habit, say. Checking email constantly when you should be focusing. List the short-term pleasure, maybe feeling busy, avoiding the hard stuff, versus the long-term pain, shoddy work, constant distraction, stress. Then flip it for the new habit, focusing deeply. Short-term pain, maybe it feels hard, takes discipline, versus long-term pleasure, flow states, high achievement, feeling proud. And then create like a 60-second ritual, like maybe stand up and do 5 quick squats the moment you feel that email urge and do it right away.
Exactly. That immediate physical action helps break the old loop and anchor the new intention.
Yeah.
And, when the issue isn't just a simple habit, but something deeper, a limiting belief, like I'm not smart enough, or I'll never be wealthy, or I don't deserve a happy relationship. That's when we turn to another powerful tool, the Dickens process. It's a really profound reframing technique. It works by maximizing that emotional contrast we just talked about.
Okay, the name itself sounds pretty dramatic. The goal here is making the cost of holding on to that belief unbearable. How does that work emotionally?
It's a very powerful visualization, and again, it demands sensory detail, full immersion. First, you vividly imagine your future, say 5, 10, 20 years out, if you don't change that limiting belief. And don't just list the problems, see it, hear it, feel it. Picture the loneliness, maybe the quiet desperation. Feel the weight of regret, the feeling of a life half-lived because of this belief. You let yourself really experience that bleak future. Then, right at the peak of that negative emotion, you pivot hard.
Pivot to the positive future, the
Yes.
opposite.
Exactly. You imagine, with just as much vivid detail, your life, if you do shatter that belief. Detail the gains. Feel the pride of accomplishment. See the thriving relationships. Feel the energy, the contribution, the joy. The contrast between the two futures should be so stark, so emotionally charged, that it creates this absolute, unshakable decision. Because the pain of staying the same is now intolerable, and the pleasure of changing is just completely compelling.
Wow, okay. And the practical exercise for this is the Dickens brief. Writing it down. 1 page for the future if nothing changes. 1 page for the future if I break this belief. Using really specific sensory words and then reading both out loud, maybe even acting them out a bit to feel the emotion.
Yeah.
That commitment generated by the contrast, that sounds like the bridge from just knowing something to actually doing something about it.
It is. And if we pull back again, connect this to the bigger picture, we need to recognize that our results, our lives, aren't just shaped by habits and beliefs in isolation. They're also driven by the standards we set for ourselves and the unspoken rules we live by. Robbins argues pretty strongly that if you change your personal rules, you fundamentally change your life. The rules you have about what needs to happen for you to feel happy or successful or loved, they create your reality. And the good news is they can be rewritten deliberately.
So an example might be, if my unconscious rule is, I can only relax after everything on my to-do list is done, which is impossible. That's a limiting rule, setting me up for constant stress. So the exercise is the standards and rules inventory. List maybe my top 5 standards for myself and my top 5 rules for feeling good or bad, then consciously rewrite the limiting ones, like, I feel successful when I focus intensely and make progress on my most important task. Something like that.
That's exactly the mechanism. Identify the current rule, see how it limits you, and consciously choose a new, empowering one. And often, these rules and habits stick around because they're trying maybe clumsily to meet a deeper, fundamental human need. Which brings us to another key lens in the framework, the 6 human needs.
Right, the 6 needs: certainty, variety, significance, love, connection, growth, and contribution. We hear these terms a lot in personal development. How should we use them practically as a tool from this framework?
They help explain the why behind a pattern. Why do you keep doing that thing, even though you know it's not good for you? Maybe procrastinating gives you the certainty of avoiding potential failure for a bit longer. Or maybe constantly seeking drama gives you significance and variety. If you understand which need the negative pattern is trying to meet, you realize it's not just a bad habit, it's a strategy. A poor one, maybe, but a strategy nonetheless. The goal then becomes finding a healthier way, a better vehicle to meet that same need. Like instead of getting significance from gossip, get it from mastering a skill, which also meets the need for growth. The old pattern often only drops away when the underlying need is met more effectively elsewhere.
Okay, this all makes sense conceptually, but it really hinges on actually doing something, doesn't it? The material constantly circles back to needing immediate action, momentum. It's not enough to just understand or plan.
Absolutely. You have to act now. It signals to your nervous system, okay, this change is real, we're moving. That's the whole point of something like the decision drill. It's about turning vague intention into concrete commitment. You literally write down maybe 3 clear decisions. I decide to stop X, I decide to start Y, and crucially for each one, you add one single non-negotiable action step you will take in the next 24 hours. No excuses. Then you sign it, date it. That physical act of deciding, committing, and taking immediate action, that's what builds momentum.
All right, let's talk strengths and weaknesses a bit. What makes this whole system, these tools, so popular and for many people, genuinely effective? What really works here beyond the obvious motivation factor?
Well, I think a key strength is how actionable it is. It gives you repeatable tools, right? The state switch, the NEC steps. It's not just abstract pep talks.
Oh.
Also, the focus on decision-making and identity, who do I need to be? That feels really empowering for people. It gives them a sense of agency. And the emphasis on immediate rituals, daily practice that aligns with what we know about habit formation.
Okay, but that brings up a really important point, especially with the intensity you described, the massive pain pleasure, the Dickens process. What are the critical caveats, the limitations people absolutely need to be aware of?
Yeah, this is crucial. We have to be really clear here. These high-energy techniques, especially the intense emotional work like the Dickens process, they can be overwhelming or maybe feel kind of surface level for people dealing with significant trauma or serious mental health conditions. This stuff is absolutely not a replacement for professional therapy or clinical help. That's vital. Think of it as a toolkit for optimizing behavior and mindset for generally healthy people, not a cure for deep psychological wounds.
That's a really important distinction. Therapy versus coaching or self-help. What other potential pitfalls should listeners be mindful of?
Well, realistically, the Robbins style can sometimes feel like it oversimplifies really complex psychological issues into neat little tactics. Life's messy, right? So these tools need to be used with self-compassion, with realism. Don't beat yourself up if it doesn't fix everything overnight. And finally, people need to understand that quick fixes are rare. Lasting change takes consistent effort. These techniques work by rewiring neurology, basically, and that requires repetition, consistent practice, rituals.
So the advice is really about sustainability, not just heroic, one-off efforts. Start small, maybe. Track your progress. Don't try to overhaul your entire life in one weekend seminar feeling.
Exactly. Apply one tool first. Master the state switch, maybe. Or use the NAC mini exercise on one small, manageable habit. Focus on building sustainable daily or weekly rituals that compound over time. That's where the real transformation happens.
This has been a really thorough deep dive into these mastery frameworks from Awaken the Giant Within. I think the core takeaway feels pretty clear. You don't have to wait for permission or for circumstances to be perfect to start becoming the person you want to be. Transformation seems to come from deciding clearly, using tools like NSE to change those deep-seated associations, and then committing to those daily actions, those rituals that build real momentum.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to take away and, chew on. We talked about creating a compelling future, that mix of vivid goals, strong emotional reasons why, and immediate actions.
Yeah.
Think about the Dickens process specifically. What's one vivid sensory detail, a smell, a sound, a sight, a feeling that you would put on your page for the future if I do change? Make it real. And then what's one small immediate action you could take, like right now, today, to start making the cost of staying the same just a little bit more unbearable and the pull of that new future a little stronger?
Powerful question to end on. Thank you for sharing all this insight from the sources. And thank you, the listener, for joining us. Now go apply something you learned. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.